The night was unusually cold, the kind that crept into your bones and made even the brightest city lights feel distant and uncaring. Outside a massive shopping mall, where glass walls reflected luxury and laughter from inside, a little girl lay curled up on a piece of cardboard near the entrance. People walked past her without slowing down. Some noticed her, most didn't. A few glanced and looked away quickly as if eye contact might make them responsible. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself and tried to sleep, even though her stomach growled and the noise of cars echoed around her. Her name was Asha. She was only 8 years old. Her hair was tied into messy braids, and her shoes were worn down so badly that her toes peeked out. She hadn't always slept outside malls. Once, she had a small home, a mother who sang while cooking, and a life that felt normal. But that was before sickness came, before rent went unpaid, before neighbors stopped knocking and the world slowly closed its doors on them. Now her days were spent wandering, asking for leftover food, and finding places that felt a little safer to rest. At night, the mall was one of those places. It had security lights, cameras, and guards who sometimes let her stay as long as she didn't cause trouble. Tonight, though, she was exhausted beyond words. She had walked all day, hoping someone would give her work, food, anything. All she had managed was a half sandwich and a bottle of water. As she lay there, she hugged a small cloth doll to her chest, the last thing her mother had given her. It was torn and faded, but to Aisha it was everything. Inside the mall, expensive stores were closing for the night. Employees laughed, chatting about dinner plans and weekend trips. Outside, the contrast was painful. Aisha shifted in her sleep as a cold wind brushed her face. She dreamed of warm food and a bed that didn't hurt her back. That was when a black luxury car slowed down near the entrance. It didn't stop right away. The driver hesitated, then pulled over. The car was sleek, polished, the kind most people only saw in movies. The engine went quiet, and for a moment everything felt still. A man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, his shoes spotless. His face showed signs of age, but also authority and confidence. This was Daniel Cross, a billionaire businessman known for his sharp decisions and colder reputation. People said he had no heart for weakness, no time for excuses. He was used to boardrooms, not sidewalks. Used to deals worth millions, not children. Sleeping on cardboard, he hadn't planned to stop. He was heading home after a long meeting, but something had caught his eye. A small figure on the ground. Too small. Too still. Something about it didn't sit right with him. He walked closer, his footsteps echoing softly. When he saw Asha's face, pale and tired, his chest tightened in a way he didn't expect. He cleared his throat gently. "Hey," he said quietly. Asha stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, filled with fear at first. She scrambled to sit up, clutching her doll. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice small. "I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'll leave." Daniel raised his hand slightly. "You don't have to go. I wanted to ask you something." She studied him, his car, his clothes, his calm voice. She had learned to be careful. Some people pretended to be kind. "Why are you sleeping here?" he asked. Aisha looked down at the ground. She didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "Because I don't have anywhere else." The simplicity of the answer hit him harder than any accusation could have. He glanced around, the bright mall behind them. The empty sidewalk. "Where are your parents?" he asked. "My mom," Asha said softly. "She's sick. She's at a shelter tonight. They didn't have space for me." Daniel felt something crack inside him. He hadn't heard that kind of honesty in years. No excuses, no dramatics, just truth. "How long has this been happening?" he asked. "Since last year," she replied. "I try to help my mom. I collect bottles. Sometimes people give me food." He imagined his own childhood, privileged, safe, full of opportunity. He imagined boardrooms where people argued over profits while a child slept outside their building. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Asha hesitated, then nodded slowly. "A little." Daniel walked back to his car and opened the back door. He took out a bag from the seat. Inside were leftovers from a catered meeting he hadn't touched. He handed her the bag, her Eyes widened. For me? Yes, he said. She took it carefully as if it might disappear. She opened it and took a small bite, then another. Tears filled her eyes, not because of the food, but because someone had stopped. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel sat down on the curb. Ignoring the cold ground and his expensive coat, he surprised himself. He hadn't sat like this in decades. What's your name? He asked. Aisha. I'm Daniel. They sat in silence for a moment, the city humming around them. Then Aisha looked up at him. Why did you stop? She asked. Daniel didn't have an answer ready. He had driven past countless people in need before, but tonight was different. Or maybe I don't know, he said honestly. I just felt like I should. Aisha nodded, as if that made perfect sense. A security guard approached from the mall, looking uneasy. Sir, is everything okay? Yes, Daniel said firmly. It's fine. The guard glanced at Aisha, then walked away. Daniel turned back to her. Listen, he said slowly. I can't leave you here tonight. Fear flickered across her face. I won't cause trouble, she said quickly. That's not what I mean, he replied gently. I mean, you shouldn't be alone out here. She clutched her doll tighter. I don't know you. That's fair, he said, but I know this isn't right. He pulled out his phone and made a call. His voice was calm, controlled, but inside his thoughts were racing. This was unplanned, uncomfortable, and yet it felt necessary. As he ended the call, he looked at Aisha again. I'm going to make sure you and your mom are safe tonight. He said, okay. She searched his face, trying to decide if she could trust him. Finally, she nodded. What Daniel didn't know yet was that this simple stop, this single question, would change his life forever. The little girl on the cardboard wasn't just someone he helped for a night. She was about to awaken parts of him he thought were long gone. And as the car door opened again and the city lights reflected off the glass, fate quietly began to shift, setting in motion a story no one could have predicted, and this was only the beginning. Daniel's call brought a response faster than Aisha expected. Within minutes, another car arrived, this one more modest, driven by a middle-aged woman with a calm face and kind eyes. She introduced herself as Maria, someone Daniel trusted to handle delicate situations. Aisha stayed close to Daniel, her fingers wrapped tightly around her doll, unsure of what would happen next. Every instinct she had learned on the streets told her to be careful, to run if things felt wrong. But something about Daniel's quiet presence made her stay. They didn't take her far. Instead, Daniel asked Maria to drive them to the shelter. Aisha mentioned. The ride was silent at first. Aisha watched the city lights blur past the window, a mix of wonder and fear in her eyes. She had never been in such a car before. Everything smelled clean, expensive, unfamiliar. She wondered if this was what normal felt like. When they reached the shelter, it was already late. Daniel stepped out first and spoke with the staff privately. Aisha waited in the car, her heart pounding. What if they separated her from her mother? What if this kindness disappeared the moment she stepped inside? Then she saw her mother. Sarah was sitting on a bench near the entrance, her shoulders slumped, her face pale from exhaustion and illness. When she saw Aisha run toward her, she struggled to stand. Aisha, she cried, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. Where were you? I was so scared. I was outside the mall, Aisha said quickly. But this man helped me. Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting Daniel's for the first time. Fear crossed her face, followed by confusion. She had learned to distrust strangers, especially wealthy ones. Daniel introduced himself simply, without titles or explanations, and explained what he had seen. I couldn't leave her there, he said. No child should sleep outside. Sarah's hands trembled as she held Aisha. Thank you, she said quietly. But we don't need trouble. I'm not here to. 'Cause Daniel replied. I just want to help. The shelter staff confirmed there was still no space for children that night. The room was crowded, underfunded, overwhelmed. Daniel listened, his jaw tightening. He had donated to charities before, written checks without thinking much about where they went. Standing there now, seeing the reality, felt different. I have a guest house, he said suddenly. It's secure, warm, you could stay there for the night. No obligations, Sarah froze. I can't accept that, she said immediately. We don't even know you. Daniel nodded. That's fair. But I can't walk away either. Aisha looked up at her mother, then at Daniel. Mama, she whispered, I don't want to sleep outside again. Those words broke what little resistance Sarah had left. She was tired, so tired. Of fighting, of choosing between bad options. Slowly she nodded. The guest house was small compared to Daniel's main home, but to Sarah and Aisha it felt unreal. Clean beds, hot water, food that didn't come from a donation box. Aisha stood under the shower longer than necessary, letting the warmth wash over her as if it could erase the past year. That night Daniel barely slept. He sat in his main house, staring out at the city, replaying the image of Aisha on the cardboard. He told himself this was temporary, just help for one night. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. Something had already shifted. The next morning, he visited the guest house. Aisha greeted him at the door with a shy smile. Good morning, she said, proud of the words. Sarah looked healthier already, color slowly returning to her face. Over breakfast, Daniel learned more about their story. How Sarah had lost her job caring for an elderly woman who passed away. How medical bills had consumed what little savings she had. How pride had kept her from asking for help until there was nowhere else to go. I tried to protect her, Sarah said, her voice cracking. But I failed, Daniel shook his head. You survived. That's not failure. As they talked, Daniel noticed small details. Aisha's intelligence, Sarah's quiet strength, their bond. It stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years, a sense of responsibility that went beyond money. He offered to arrange medical care for Sarah. She resisted at first, but exhaustion won again. Appointments were made, tests scheduled. For the first time in months, Sarah felt hope. Days passed, then weeks. What was meant to be a short stay slowly became something more permanent. Aisha started attending a nearby school. She struggled at first, intimidated by clean uniforms and children who had never known hunger, but she learned quickly, too quickly. Teachers noticed her curiosity, her kindness, her resilience. Daniel visited often, sometimes bringing gifts, sometimes just sitting and listening. He told himself he was just making sure they were okay, but the truth was he looked forward to those visits more than any business meeting. One evening, as they walked in the garden, Aisha suddenly stopped. Why are you so nice to us? She asked. Daniel hesitated. He had asked himself the same question. Maybe, he said slowly, because someone once helped me when I needed it, and I never forgot how that felt. That wasn't entirely true. No one had helped him like this. But it was what he wished had happened. What none of them realized yet was that their meeting wasn't random. That the threads connecting their lives had been woven long before that. Cold night outside the mall. And as trust slowly grew, the past buried, forgotten, and painful was inching closer to the surface because Daniel wasn't just a billionaire who stopped his car out of kindness, and Aisha wasn't just a homeless little girl. The truth, when it finally emerged, would change everything they thought they knew about each other. The changes in their lives continued quietly, almost gently, as if the world itself was giving them time to breathe. Sarah's medical appointments revealed what she had feared for months, but never had the courage or means to confirm. Her illness was serious but treatable. Early treatment would make all the difference. When the doctor explained the plan, Sarah felt her knees weaken. Relief and fear collided inside her chest. Relief that there was hope, fear of what it would cost. Daniel didn't hesitate. He handled everything with a calm efficiency that left Sarah overwhelmed. Bills were paid before she even saw them. Medications appeared on the table without explanation. Appointments were scheduled, transportation arranged. Each time she tried to protest, Daniel would gently stop her. Focus on getting better, he would say. That's all that matters right now. For Aisha, life began to feel like something out of a dream. She learned what it meant to have routines, morning breakfasts, school backpacks, clean clothes folded neatly on a bed that was hers. At night she would lie awake, afraid that if she slept too deeply, she might wake up back on the cold pavement outside the mall. Sometimes she would quietly get up and peek through the window, just to reassure herself that the guest house was still there. Daniel noticed her fear before she ever spoke of it. One evening, he found her sitting on the floor, lining up her shoes carefully. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. "Making sure I can leave fast," she replied honestly, "in case we have to go again." The words hit him harder than any business loss ever had. He knelt beside her. "You don't have to go anywhere," he said. "Not today. Not tomorrow, but what if you change your mind?" she asked, looking up at him. Daniel had no answer ready, because part of him feared that too. Not that he would change his mind, but that life would somehow take them away from him again, the way everything else had slipped through his fingers. Instead, he said, "If that day ever comes, I'll tell you myself. I promise." Aisha nodded, accepting the promise with the seriousness only children carried. As weeks turned into months, Daniel found himself spending less time at his penthouse and more time near the guest house. He attended Aja's school meetings, listening proudly as teachers spoke about her progress. He learned her favorite foods, her favorite stories, the way she hummed softly when she was nervous. Slowly, without realizing it, he began to build his schedule around them. Sarah noticed the change too. She saw the way Daniel looked at Aisha when he thought no one was watching. There was longing there, regret, a tenderness that felt deeper than simple kindness. One afternoon, while Aisha was at school, Sarah finally gathered the courage to ask, "Why are you really doing all this?" she said quietly. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling for a long moment. "Because I don't want her to grow up the way I did," he answered. Sarah frowned. "But you're rich, powerful, you've had everything." Daniel smiled sadly. "I had money, not everything." He told her then, bits and pieces at first, about a childhood spent in boarding schools, about parents who were always busy, always distant, about mistakes he made when he was younger, people he hurt by choosing ambition over responsibility. "There was someone," he admitted, "a long time ago. I walked away when things became complicated. I told myself it was the right choice. I told myself I had no other option." Sarah's heart began to race, a strange unease creeping over her. "And what happened to her?" she asked. "I don't know," Daniel said quietly. "I lost contact. Or maybe I didn't try hard enough to keep it." The room felt suddenly smaller. Sarah's hands trembled slightly in her lap. Memories she had locked away for years began pushing forward. A charming man, promises, a sudden disappearance when life became inconvenient. She said nothing. Fear told her to stay silent, to protect Aisha, to protect herself from disappointment. But the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. A few days later, an old photo slipped out of Sarah's bag while she was cleaning. Daniel picked it up absent-mindedly, then froze. The image showed a much younger Sarah, smiling nervously, standing beside a man whose face was unmistakably his own. His breath caught. His world tilted. "Sarah," he said slowly, holding up the photo. "Where did this come from?" The silence that followed was heavy, fragile, terrifying. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want her to know," she whispered. "I didn't want to hope?" Daniel looked from the photo to her face, then finally to Aisha's empty chair. "How old is she?" he asked. 6, Sarah replied. The math hit him instantly. The timing, the memories. The night he left. The excuses he told himself, his voice broke. She's my daughter, isn't she?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming freely now. "I tried to find you." "I did, but you were gone. And when I finally heard your name again, you were untouchable." Daniel sank into the chair, his head in his hands. The weight of realization crushed him. The little girl sleeping outside a mall, the child he had sworn to protect. His child. Everything suddenly made sense, and everything became far more complicated. Because now, helping them wasn't an act of kindness. It was an act of redemption, and the hardest part was still ahead, telling Aisha the truth. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in the dark, the city lights flickering beyond the windows, replaying every memory he had tried to forget. Sarah's tears, the photo in his hand. Aisha's small voice asking if he would ever change. His mind, The truth pressed down on him with a weight he had never felt before. For the first time in his life, money, power, and influence meant nothing. He had a daughter. And he had almost lost her. Morning came quietly. Birds chirped in the garden, unaware of the storm inside the house. Daniel went to the guest house early, his heart pounding harder with every step. Sarah was already awake, sitting at the table, eyes red but calm, as if she had cried all her tears during the night. "We need to tell her," Daniel said softly. Sarah nodded. "I know, I'm just scared." "So am I," he admitted. Aisha came. In moments later, her hair still messy from sleep, clutching her doll. She smiled when she saw Daniel. "Good morning," she said brightly. Daniel knelt in front of her, suddenly unsure how to speak. All his rehearsed words vanished. He looked up at Sarah, silently asking for strength. She joined them, sitting close to Aisha, taking her hand. "There's something important we need to talk about," Sarah began gently. Aisha's smile faded, replaced by confusion. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah said quickly. "Never." Daniel took a deep breath. "Aisha, do you remember when you asked me why I was helping you?" She nodded slowly. "I told you someone once helped me," he continued. "That wasn't the whole truth." Aisha tilted her head, listening carefully. "The truth is," Daniel said, his voice shaking, "I've known your mother for a very long time, longer than you've been alive." Aisha looked between them. "Before I was born?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. Daniel swallowed. "And that means I'm not just someone who wanted to help you." The room felt unbearably quiet. "I'm your father," he said. "Your real father." Aisha stared at him, unblinking. Seconds passed. Then more. Daniel's heart sank, fear flooding his chest. Had he broken her world? "My daddy?" she asked finally. "Yes," he said softly. If you want me to be." She looked at Sarah. "Is it true?" Sarah nodded, tears filling her eyes again. "I wanted to tell you when you were older. I didn't know how." Aisha looked back at Daniel. Her small face crumpled, not with anger, but with something far more painful, confusion mixed with relief. "So, when I was sleeping outside," she said slowly, "you didn't know?" Daniel shook his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. "No, and I'm so sorry. I should have been there." "I should have protected you." Aisha stood up suddenly, making Daniel flinch. Then she did something he never expected. She walked into his arms. He froze for a second, then wrapped her in the tightest hug of his life, afraid that if he let go, she might disappear. Aisha held him back just as tightly, her small fingers gripping his jacket. "I always wondered where my daddy was," she whispered. "I thought maybe he was lost." Daniel broke down then, sobbing openly. All the walls he had built over decades collapsing in that moment. "I was lost," he said. "But I'm here now." From that day on, everything changed, and yet nothing changed all at once. Trust wasn't automatic. Love didn't erase the past. But honesty filled the space where fear had lived. Daniel didn't rush to move them into his main house. He wanted Aisha to feel safe, not overwhelmed. Instead, he spent time, real time, helping with homework, walking her to school, listening to her stories, no matter how small. At school, Aisha told her teacher proudly, "My daddy picks me up now." Sarah's health improved steadily. With proper treatment and rest, the shadows under her eyes faded. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't shaped by survival alone. The media eventually found out. Headlines tried to twist the story, but Daniel stood firm. He protected their privacy fiercely, making it clear that his daughter was not a spectacle. The world could wait. One evening, months later, the three of them stood outside the mall where it had all begun. The same lights, the same pavement. But everything felt different. "Why did you bring us here?" Aisha asked. Daniel knelt beside her. "Because this is where I found you," he said, "and where I almost lost you forever. I never want to forget that." Aisha nodded solemnly, then smiled. "I'm glad you stopped your car." "So am I," Daniel said. They walked away together, hand in hand, leaving the cold memory behind. What began as a chance encounter became a reunion written by fate and sealed by courage. Uh, Little girl slept outside a mall, a billionaire stopped his car, and three broken lives found their way back to each other, not through money, but through love.